This is ABTV, Animal Bites Television. For animal lovers, by animal lovers.
Hey, I'm Primitive Tim, and today we're heading out into a vast forest. Now, the reason we're heading into this forest is for one animal. This forest holds Florida's only population of monkeys. Now, these monkeys are completely wild, they're self-sustaining, and of course, they're not native. So we'll go over that in a second. But what's crazy about this forest is it's completely covered in mosquitoes. I'm gonna have to cover up. So I've got long sleeves and I'm gonna have to cover up my face. All right, so that's gonna keep me pretty well covered. But yeah, this is gonna be pretty intense. Now let's go ahead and address the issue of mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are awful out here, and this is something that the Rhesus macaque has to deal with every moment of every day and all night as well. So luckily they're able to adapt in a more primitive or natural way than I am. The Rhesus macaque grows fur. His whole body's covered in fur, just a few patches on the hands and feet and a little bit on the face that are bare. But man, that gets really hot really fast. So during the heat of the day in the summertime, they just become inactive. They don't go around and forage as much, and they're also good swimmers. So they'll even use bodies of water to cool off in. Now these monkeys are still gonna get bit, but not nearly as much as if they were bare and naked, kind of like humans. In this week's Quiz of the Week, the question is, at what age will an infant Rhesus macaque leave its mother and begin to venture on its own? Is the answer A, 5 days old, B, 5 weeks old, C, 5 months old, or D, 5 years old? Leave a comment with your answer down below and check back later in the episode to see if you were right. Their natural range is the second largest range of any primate in the world. You know what the first is? It's us humans. And so these primates live all the way from Pakistan east all the way into Thailand, and it's just a vast range all the way across the Asian continent. With such a vast range, this tells you something about the monkey itself. It says these are very adaptable monkeys because, check this out, in Pakistan you're going to have extremely different habitats than you're going to have in Thailand. So for the same species to be able to maintain populations in one area and then in another area that's completely different, that tells you this is a very adaptable monkey, and it's going to do well wherever you put it. Warning, cuteness overload. Baby macaques are just the cutest with their big ears and their glossy eyes. So this segment is for anyone that just loves baby monkeys. The baby Rhesus macaques are incredible. I mean, they have to hang on to their mama with their hands and feet for dear life, while mama's climbing, 50 feet up in the trees. So back to Florida. These monkeys are in Florida, and there's about 100 of them out here in these woods. And the population is pretty steady. They're not really growing a whole lot. They're not decreasing. They're pretty much staying steady at roughly 100 individuals. Now these monkeys are split off into 3 different troops. So there's about 3 different troops of 30-something individuals. Now the Silver River is one of the oldest tourist locations in Florida. And back in the day, there was a riverboat captain. He put the monkeys right on this island thinking, they're gonna hang out on the island, they won't swim away because they're monkeys, they don't swim, right? And so when I come by with my boat, all the tourists are gonna see them, they're gonna love them, they're gonna think it's great. However, he didn't know a whole lot about the monkeys. Because in fact, these monkeys can swim. They can swim like half a mile if they need to. And the river's not even that big. So they were hung out on the island for a little bit, and then they split. They just left the island. Now a second ago I touched on adaptability. Basically this means they are very skilled at assessing new situations and finding out how they can survive in that new situation. And so when they were introduced into Florida, they had never seen these trees before. They had never seen many of the animals. All they had was their instinct. Their instinct is incredible. And so when they came out here and they started seeing all these things, it's all plants, they would take it, they'd sniff it, they'd smell it, taste it, and then they would eat it. Now their ability to find out what's edible and what's not has to do with their diet a little bit. Sitting out here and watching them do their thing, they've always been eating a lot of plants. I've seen them eat a few bugs, but they're not big hunters. They forage. They forage for insects, spiders, and just other bugs, whatever they can catch. Man, whew, these mosquitoes are getting bad. I'm gonna have to cover up again. Mosquitoes! I hate mosquitoes. So anyway, about the monkey. Now, I personally watched them eat a lot of greens. They've been eating a lot of the new growth off of trees. They've also eaten the Spanish moss here. Will have little new growth tips, and they'll pluck that off and eat it. Another cool thing that I was able to witness was them eating a spider. He plucked that spider right off the top of the water, crammed it in his mouth, and chewed on it and swallowed it down. So they're not very picky animals, and they'll eat a lot of stuff. They're generalists. They use their senses to figure things out, and not a lot of other animals can be thrown into a completely new situation and be expected to figure things out. Now, whenever we have a new species get introduced into Florida, it's usually pretty much a disaster. We've got pythons, cane toads. Those are some of the larger invasives that we have, and it's always a disaster. Now, with the Rhesus macaques, there's been studies done on them to see what kind of effects they're having on the local ecosystem. And while they are having some negative effects, it's not nearly as bad as you might expect. They're actually not a big population, so there's plenty of forest to go around. Being able to come out here and see wild monkeys, you know, climbing around the trees, I think that's absolutely amazing. But then again, there's the other side of the situation where they're just not really good for the local ecosystem. And so I've come across a few of the males, and males can be very territorial. Not so much with humans, but with other males especially. So these monkeys, they'll stare at you, and they just give you this dark, deep stare, and their brow kind of sinks down, and they just look at you. Now, if you look back at them and give them that same stare, that's a sign of aggression. And so you don't want to do that with these monkeys, because they do recognize your facial expressions and where you're looking. So it's never a good idea to stare straight into the eyes of a male monkey that's looking straight at you. If you do, he may charge at you, and normally they just do a mark charge where they come at you and then they stop really quick, and you know, they'll bob their head and kind of bark at you. They go whoo 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 whoo, and you know, it's kind of comical to me because, you know, I'm several times their weight, because they only get about, you know, 20 to 30 pounds. However, they have something that's far more lethal than just their teeth. The majority of these monkeys actually are carriers of herpes B. That's a bad disease that I do not want to get. So herpes B is carried through fluid. If he bit me, he's got fluid in his mouth, saliva, and he bit me and got that into the blood of my body, I could potentially catch herpes B, and in humans, it's usually fatal. So I really don't want to have any kind of conflict with these animals, and so if I see a male staring at me, I'm just going to look away and pretend he's not there. If I do that, it's a sign of submission, even though I hate to submit to a monkey, and he'll leave me alone and he's not going to attack. All right, the mosquitoes are just getting terrible again, so on with the shamak, and I'm getting out of these godforsaken woods. Now, thanks for joining me on this episode with the Rhesus macaques. This was an absolute blast to film. I love this area. It's super cool. Only downside is all these freaking mosquitoes. They're just terrible. But this is actually a place you can visit. All you have to do is go to Silver River, get on a kayak or any kind of boat, and go down the river toward the spring, and keep an eye up in the trees, and you're likely to see some monkeys. Now, it's important that we don't feed monkeys, because they can become accustomed to humans, and that's when bad interactions happen, is when they expect food from you. So go out there, if you're ever in Florida, go out there, see some monkeys. It's a really cool experience. And until next time, find a new way to appreciate nature. The answer to this week's quiz of the week was A. At 5 days old, the infant Rhesus macaques will begin to leave their mothers for very short periods of time. Get me out of this godforsaken forest. Jeez.
Got him good? Tell me when you got him. All right, don't let him wrap up around you. Don't let him wrap up.
There you have it.
Got him?
My first python hunting partner.
This
There you
is
go.
ABTV,